A cruise ship carrying just 1,300 passengers and 800 crew generates close to 100,000 gallons of wastewater every single day, nearly 500 tons. Over a 6-day Atlantic crossing, that total reaches 3,000 tons, produced entirely at sea with no port and no sewer system in reach. So when you flush a toilet mid-ocean, where does all of it actually go? And what prevents it from ending up in the water below? Each day, a ship with 1,300 passengers and 800 crew produces about 100,000 gallons of wastewater. That's nearly 500 tons, roughly the weight of a fully loaded Boeing 747, created from showers, toilets, sinks, laundries, and galleys in just 24 hours. Over the course of a 6-day Atlantic crossing, the total climbs to 600,000 gallons, or about 3,000 tons. Every flush, every shower, every load of laundry adds to this total, with each person on board responsible for 40 to 50 gallons per day. Black water from toilets makes up a smaller share, about 5 to 10 gallons per person, but the combined effect is massive. Gray water from showers and sinks accounts for the bulk of the volume, driven by daily routines and the constant operation of hotel services at sea. These numbers are not just abstract figures. They shape the ship's design and dictate the scale of the systems hidden below deck. Wastewater cannot simply be dumped overboard or left to accumulate unchecked. On a voyage far from shore, the ship must handle, store, and treat every gallon, whether by routing it through advanced treatment plants or storing it in ballast tanks when discharge is restricted. The sheer volume of liquid waste turns an ordinary act, flushing a toilet, into a logistical and engineering challenge that plays out on a scale few passengers ever imagine. International law leaves no room for improvisation when it comes to managing sewage at sea. The International Maritime Organization, or IMO, sets the global rules through a treaty called MARPOL. Annex 4 of this convention draws a firm line. Dumping untreated sewage overboard is strictly forbidden for ships carrying passengers. The regulation applies to any ship above 400 gross tons or those certified to carry more than 15 people, which includes even modest cruise vessels. Instead, ships must be equipped with approved sewage treatment plants, comminuting and disinfecting systems, or large holding tanks. Discharge of untreated sewage is only permitted in rare cases, far from land and under controlled conditions, such as being more than 12 nautical miles offshore and moving at a steady speed. Even then, the waste must come from a holding tank and be released at a moderate rate. For treated effluent, the standards are exacting. MARPOL Annex 4 sets the maximum allowable biochemical oxygen demand, or BOD5, at 25 milligrams per liter, and total suspended solids, or TSS, at 35 milligrams per liter. These thresholds are lower than those enforced by many municipalities on land. Ships must also ensure that no visible solids or discoloration are present in the discharge. Continuous monitoring, record keeping, regular inspections by flag states and port authorities enforce compliance. Violations can result in fines, detentions, or even bans from certain ports. This legal framework is not just theoretical. It compels every cruise ship to install, operate, and maintain complex onboard treatment systems capable of meeting these international standards, regardless of the ship's itinerary or the length of its voyage. The scale of daily wastewater generation, combined with these strict regulations, means that every flush is governed by a global rulebook, not just by engineering necessity. Wastewater on a cruise ship is divided into two main streams, each with its own challenges and rules. Black water comes from toilets and urinals. It carries not only liquid but also solid waste, toilet paper, and a high concentration of pathogens, bacteria, viruses, and other microbes that pose direct health risks if released untreated. Even though black water makes up a smaller share of the total volume, about 5 to 10 gallons per person each day, its contamination level is much higher. This is the stream that international law targets most strictly, requiring complete treatment before any discharge at sea. Gray water, by contrast, comes from showers, sinks, laundry, and kitchen drains. It makes up the majority of the ship's wastewater, often 30 to 40 gallons per person daily, mainly because of bathing, cleaning, and food preparation. While gray water looks cleaner and carries fewer pathogens, it still contains soap, detergents, food particles, grease, and trace chemicals from personal care products. Some of these substances can harm marine life or disrupt sensitive coastal ecosystems if released in large quantities. In certain regions, like Alaska or the Baltic Sea, gray water is subject to strict controls, sometimes even stricter than for black water. Both streams enter the ship's hidden plumbing network, but their paths quickly diverge. Black water is routed directly to the sewage treatment plant, where it undergoes mechanical filtering, biological breakdown in aeration chambers, settlement, and final sterilization. Gray water may be treated alongside black water in advanced systems, or stored separately and released under controlled conditions, depending on the ship's location and the laws in force. Understanding this split is essential, because every gallon, whether heavily contaminated or relatively clean, must be managed with precision and care to protect both passengers and the ocean. Deep within the lowest part of the ship, below the passenger decks and engine rooms, a network of tanks lines the hull along the keel. These reservoirs serve a dual purpose, quietly supporting the ship's stability while acting as temporary storage for wastewater. Their placement at the very bottom of the vessel is no accident. At this depth, any added weight lowers the ship's center of gravity, improving balance in rough seas. When the ship is far from shore, treated effluent can be discharged overboard in accordance with MARPOL regulations. But in coastal waters, or when passing through sensitive areas where discharge is restricted, these tanks become essential buffers. Engineers monitor the fill levels constantly, relying on automated sensors and digital readouts in the control room. Each tank's status is tracked in real time, with alarms set to warn if limits are approached. The automation reduces human error and allows the crew to respond quickly to changes in consumption, passenger load, or weather conditions. The tanks themselves are designed to handle both black water and gray water, though the two streams are kept separate until treatment is complete. Unlike traditional ballast tanks that hold only seawater, these multi-use reservoirs can be switched between wastewater storage and ballast duties as needed. When the ship's wastewater treatment plant is operating, processed water may be routed temporarily to these tanks before final discharge. This approach ensures that the ship remains compliant with international law, even when environmental or operational constraints prevent immediate release. The ability to store large volumes of treated water gives the vessel flexibility and keeps operations running smoothly, no matter the itinerary or local restrictions. In this way, the hidden tanks beneath the decks are more than just plumbing. They are a critical part of the ship's balance, both physically and legally, setting the stage for what happens next in the treatment chain. Black water begins its transformation in the ship's sewage treatment plant with a mechanical filter, removing particles larger than 0.04 microns, finer than a human hair. Next, the liquid flows into an aeration chamber, where billions of living aerobic bacteria, sustained by constant oxygen, break down organic waste. These microscopic workers digest contaminants over several hours, turning sewage into simpler compounds. The mixture then enters a settlement tank. Here, gravity separates the dense sludge from the clarified liquid, with sludge routed for incineration or shore disposal. Finally, the purified water passes through ultraviolet light or a chlorine dose, killing nearly all remaining pathogens, reducing bacteria to less than 250 colony forming units per 100 milliliters. What started as raw sewage now leaves the plant as clear, disinfected water, ready for safe discharge or storage. Gray water, despite appearing less hazardous, is not exempt from legal scrutiny. International rules typically permit ships to discharge treated gray water at least 3 nautical miles from shore. Yet, in Alaska's coastal waters, regulators have drawn a much harder line. Discharge of gray water is outright banned within 3 miles of land, and ships caught violating these restrictions face investigation and fines. Alaska's Department of Environmental Conservation has prosecuted cruise lines for illegal releases, holding operators accountable even when the water looks clean. For ships, the difference between compliance and violation can hinge on a few nautical miles, and the consequences are real. Every flush at sea triggers a chain of engineering, regulation, and accountability. 3,000 tons of waste, managed by onboard systems and strict MARPOL oversight. The scale is invisible, but the impact is measurable. How we handle wastewater now shapes the future health of our oceans. Thanks for watching.